rise. These are Charles Anyekolo. Now in Sudan, most shops are closed in the capital Khartoum amid a general strike. It's the second day of strike action called by protest leaders demanding the resignation of the ruling Transitional Military Council. The Sudanese Professionals Association is urging people to stay at home in protest against the deadly crackdown last week when security forces violently dispersed the group's main sit-in outside the military headquarters in Khartoum. Protesters say more than 100 people have been killed since the crackdown began.
I'm taking part in the strike because of the government in place, because of the current situation, and because of the massacre that took place at the sit-in. Since yesterday, I've been preparing, and I've got enough food and supplies to last the week so I can take part in the total civil disobedience. And I hope that everyone takes part in the disobedience for change, and because they really want the government to be civilian and to be democratic.
Well, to look at this story in more detail, we can cross to African Affairs analyst and publisher of Africa Briefing, John Ofe-Ansah, who is in our London studio. Good to talk with you, John. First of all, on the civil disobedience and the strike, what sense do you have about how successful it's been or not at the end of the second day?
Well, it's been successful in that the call to civil disobedience, the call to stay away, businesses and all activities to come to a close have been largely heeded. I mean, yesterday, Sunday, was very quiet in Khartoum and across, most parts of the country. Streets were deserted. Everybody, all shops were shuttered. The airport was even closed down. So generally, it was successful. But up to now, it has not yielded the desired effects. It was called to force, the Transitional Military Council to, reopen negotiations with the civilian protesters. But so far, nothing of that sort, is on the horizon, if I could put it that way. Yeah.
Yes, I suppose to that extent you are right. I mean, the military council clearly doesn't seem to have much intention of handing over power to civilians, whatever they say. So, I mean, based on your knowledge of what is going on there, the contacts you've got on the ground, and the fact that you've kept weather eye over developments in Sudan, what level do you think this civil disobedience will have to go if it's to exert the right amount of pressure on the military?
Let me go back. When the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Mohammed visited Khartoum over the weekend to try and mediate, he met with members of the military council and members of the alliance, protesting, the civilian alliance. Soon after he left, 3 members of the alliance were detained, arrested and detained. But I hear that, they have been released this afternoon. Okay. Now, as it is, it appears even the TMC, so the Transitional Military Council itself, it appears to be split. The members belonging to the regular army appear to be sympathetic to, the civilians, whereas the under faction led by the deputy chairman of the junta, General Dagado, popularly known as Hemeti, is hell-bent on clinging on to power. So I think this is going to go on for some time. And I fear maybe more bloodshed, happening. But it will take a lot of effort from the government, the TMC's allies, supporters in Saudi Arabia, in United Arab Emirates, and Egypt to impress upon them the need, to go back to the negotiating table with the civilians and try and resolve this matter before, it turns, very bloody. Because this is a country where, or a region where revolutions, turn into civil war. We saw it in neighboring Somalia a few years ago, well, about a decade or so ago. So the allies, namely Egypt, UAE, and Saudi Arabia, need to, because Saudi Arabia actually recently pledged $3 billion to the government as budgetary support. Okay, so they appear to have that clout, that influence. So they should, maybe the U.S. anyway should push Saudi, in turn push Saudi in turn to push the TMC to resolve this matter.
Well, and you've answered the question I was going to ask you, because the next question was going to be what concrete steps can foreign countries take to improve the situation in Sudan? And as you correctly pointed out, clearly the international community obviously quite divided there. I mean, Saudi Arabia, the United Emirates are pretty openly supporting the Transitional Military Council, and others are calling on that council to hand over power to civilians. So a bit of a stalemate there.
It is a stalemate, but I hope Abiy, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy, if we can recall, was partly instrumental in the latest peace deal that is holding in South Sudan. And I always compare him favorably to ex-US President Jim Carter, who has that ability to bring peace, when all seems lost. So I'm hoping that Mohamed Abiy, in the interim, will step up, his efforts at mediating between the two sides for them to come to a mutually acceptable compromise.
Okay, on that bucolic note, John Ofe Ansah, who is, of course, the publisher of Africa Briefing and the African Affairs analyst, I want to thank you very much indeed for joining us there from our studios in London.